No excuses for Kyle Pitts. None.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
To the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and joining me are Jarvis Davis, Aaron Freeman, and Tori McElhaney. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit on the classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. This Atlanta Football Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it's almost time to meet the Rooks, so let's talk about the Rooks. But real talk, are we still giving hot takes about the pick at 8? Yes, we are. Yes, they are. Anyway, but first, we're going to talk about, speaking of what MPX has in his toolkit. That's the new nickname that Jarvis has given Michael Penix Jr., so I'm rolling with it. All right, guys. About a month ago, Kyle Pitts said, when asked by the media about giving up the number 8 jersey to Kirk Cousins, quote, "I just want targets every game." Well, he may just get his wish, with the Falcons announcing just after our show last week that they picked up his 5th-year option. So let's talk about that. The move tells me that the Falcons believe KP can get back to the 2021 version of himself this season. But Jarvis, what does this move say to you?
I feel like it lets them know. It lets us know that he's healthy and he's going to be back to a full go. We're probably going to see the guy that's closer to 2021 than close than the guy that we've seen for the past couple of years. So I feel like that's something that, it's almost kind of like a guarantee, right? That he's going to have a quarterback, for the next 5 or 6 years, right?
True.
That's capable of getting him the rock, like, and getting him those targets like he wants. So I really feel like the Falcons kind of set him up for success, and it's up to him as to whether or not he's going to be successful or not.
Yeah, Aaron, I have to agree with Jarvis. That was one of the things I mentioned on our Sports Extra show with 11 Alive last night, that I figure, hey, this is a vote of confidence for Kyle Pitts, but also a vote of confidence to me with signing Kirk Cousins and then even signing a Michael Penix Jr. to say, hey, if we get you a quarterback like we had for you in your rookie year, then we can see the unicorn again. But what do you think that move, what does it mean to you? What does it say to you?
Yeah, I think it definitely means he's in their plans for the next couple of years. Beyond that, we'll have to sort of see. I think a lot of that depends on what type of production Kyle Pitts has these next couple of years, where I think because of his sort of unique ability, the unicornness of him, that second contract's going to be very interesting. Does he get paid more like a wide receiver? Does he get paid more like a tight end? So a lot of that kind of depends on what type of production that he has the next couple of years. And that depends on him, his health. That depends on the quarterback play. And, as we've mentioned before, we think that's going to be a big upgrade with Kirk Cousins and then Michael Penix Jr. in the future. And it also depends on the play calling from Zach Robinson. Like, Kyle Pitts has been kind of used differently than other tight ends, more as a deep threat than most tight ends in the league are used. And I wonder if they'll kind of shift that a little bit now that they have a little bit more speed at the wide receiver position, and he can sort of be more of that sort of underneath intermediate sort of weapon that most tight ends in the leagues are, and maybe that will lead to some increased production for him.
Yeah, that's a great call, Tori, because maybe if you do like you do with normal tight ends, where you would give them the ball and kind of toss it to them with under 10 yards and then let them get all the yak that they can, that's where they really get their yards. If you go back to that, or if you look at maybe what Zach Robinson and Sean McVay extended tree did with a Tyler Higbee or a TJ Hawkinson, maybe you do get that Kyle Pitts back. And maybe this regime is saying, hey, we were picking up your 5th-year option because we feel like with the right offensive coordinator and with the right quarterbacks, we can get you back to who we know you can be, if not better.
Yeah, no, I think everybody raises the point of this is almost like I don't like using the word tryout because that's not what this is. But the next 2 years really are going to tell the Falcons what exactly they have in Kyle Pitts. And I say that because you can go over the last 3 years with Matt Ryan, with Marcus Mariota, having to go through the injury, and then Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke this past year. And it's kind of been all over the place, as his stats can foretell. But at the end of the day, it's like, what can happen for Kyle Pitts when there is a certain level of consistency at the quarterback position? And so if the case is that Kirk Cousins goes out and performs to the level of the contract that they gave him over the next 2 years, you can expect, and you should expect, Kyle Pitts' overall performance, overall targets, overall consistency in play to upshoot as well, because they go hand in hand. This is a receiver quarterback duo that we're talking about. I know Kyle Pitts is a tight end, but the reason you go out and spend a number 4 overall draft pick on Kyle Pitts is not to see him block. It's to at the goal line. It's to see him score touchdowns and be in the end zone and be a threat in the end zone. So for all of those reasons, I think you have this perfect storm of these next 2 years are vitally important to, one, Kyle Pitts' trajectory in the league and how we view that number 4 overall draft pick, but also the decision that the Falcons made to bring in Kirk Cousins to provide a level of consistency at the quarterback position. So all these things are happening at one time. And at the end of the day, I really do think that this is the best thing that could have happened for Kyle Pitts at this point in his career. He's healthy again. He's kind of itching to, I haven't personally asked him this question, but I can almost imagine he's a competitor. You're itching to get the ball thrown your way. You're itching to have these dynamic plays to show why you are where you are and why you were drafted where you were, because there have been so many times that people have questioned Kyle Pitts. And I think that if I'm him, I want to go out there and be like, look, you were questioning me when you really should have been questioning scheme, when you really should have been questioning the quarterback play. Yeah. I'm going to show you what I can do with a quarterback that can get the ball in my catch radius, which, let's be honest, is a big catch radius. So let's just get it in there.
Yeah, exactly. And, Tori, I was thinking too that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the whole like triggering and hot takes, but part of why Michael Penix Jr. at 8 was such a trigger takes you back to picking Kyle Pitts at 4 and then taking Drake. Like it was all like a snowball effect, because you felt like, well, at least the fan base felt like they didn't get what they wanted or what they thought they'd get out of Kyle Pitts on a consistent basis, like building on that rookie season, and then didn't get quite, definitely saw more flashes out of it from Drake London, but didn't quite get that. And even a Bijan Robinson. So it was like stacking on, and then you bring in Penix Jr. at 8, and it's like, oh my God. But maybe now that you've got the right pieces in place, both on the field and on the sidelines, you can see exactly what it is that you thought you were going to get out of him. Real quick, I wanted to ask you guys about this as well. An article was released Sunday on A2ZSports.com about Michael Penix Jr. He told writer Chrissy Freud he feels his best quality as a player is to make any throw on the field. And I think we can all agree he can do that. At some point, we'll see that he will. But Penix also said he's looking forward to showing people the other things in his wheelhouse. He said, quote, "I can run. People don't see me run much, so I feel like they don't know, but I can run, and they'll find out here soon." So, Aaron, now that you've had some more time to dive a little deeper into Penix's toolkit, do you feel like running or something else might be another well-kept secret weapon for him?
Yeah, I think so. I've been watching a little bit more of Michael Penix at Indiana, and I think he did run a little bit more earlier in his career. And I think probably due to the injuries that he probably decided to stop sort of doing that and just show what he could do as a pocket quarterback at Washington. And he was obviously very effective at that this past year. So I do think there's more in his skill set than necessarily he showed at Washington, but you probably have to go back to, 2019 when he was at Indiana. It feels so long ago. But I think he definitely has more mobility and running in his skill set.
Yeah. How about you, Tori?
I think one of the, I was just gonna say that I think one of the things that it's interesting that teams will be able to know that is going to be in this toolkit, right? Because that can be one thing that can be a killer, because if you're coming into a game, you're preparing for him to sit in that pocket, be on time, and do those certain things. And I think that's one thing that we haven't seen from a Sean McVay or a Zach Robinson offense, right? Because those guys, Matthew Stafford, he ain't going nowhere. You can play coverage and kind of understand it from that aspect of it. But when you bring this element, that running aspect to this type of offense, that could be very, very dangerous. And if he's pick and chooses his spots in the right, pick and choose his spots correctly, I feel like he can be a dangerous weapon. When you're talking about a guy who can, get the ball out on time and run that offense and push the ball down the field and have that elite accuracy that feel that he has. I feel like when you add that element of, hey, I will take off and get this 6 or 7 yards on third down, that is going to put defenses in a very bad spot, and defensive coordinator is going to be having nightmares for sure.
For me, it's hard to really project at this point because the Falcons hope that Michael Penix Jr. is not going to see the field for a few years. So we're sitting here talking about a guy who a few years ago at Indiana could run the ball. He's saying now he can run the ball, but you don't see him on the field probably for a couple of years, a few years. And it's like, is that even in his repertoire at that point? Is that something that he can still rely on? And I feel like you're getting farther and farther away from even potentially having this offensive line together. This is a Falcons offensive line that run blocks, I think, as well as any team across the league. And I think they've shown that over the last couple of years. I'm curious how many of those pieces would be there for Michael Penix Jr. if this thing goes the way that the Falcons hope it does, which is you get all of Kirk Cousins that you can for the next 3 years. And then maybe in year 4 or year 5, then you're looking at Michael Penix Jr. I mean, I find it really, really hard to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, he can add this level of consistent running ability to the offense when I don't know. I don't know if that's what we're going to see from him. I don't know what the crux of this offense is going to be in 4 years' time. And I hope that's not a cop-out, but it's just truly, I'm having a hard time seeing past where we are, because who's to say Jake Matthews is blocking for him in 4 years? Who's to say that Chris Lindstrom will be there, but Caleb McGarry, Matthew Bergeron, what decision do you make with him? All of that, all of those things I think factor into what Michael Penix could do as a guy who's going to tuck it and run.
And I think that even goes to take it a step further from what you're talking about, Tori. I feel like we haven't seen Zach Robinson call plays yet. So we don't, because he may be different. Because one of the things that, when he was first hired, everybody talking about Sean McVay, it's not going to be Sean McVay's offense. It's going to be Zach Robinson's offense. He's going to be the one calling the plays, and he's going to be the one, getting into a certain rhythm or finding what that rhythm is, right? Because he's the first time play caller. And one thing about Sean McVay calls the plays the way Sean McVay calls plays. And Zach Robinson is going to have to call plays the way he calls plays. And now we just projecting for sure, but I think that, overall, it's going to be a trickle-down effect, because once Zach Robinson gets comfortable calling plays and gets into a groove and doing that, then we'll see what Michael Penix is going to be. Then we'll see what Kyle Pitts is going to be in this offense. And we'll see if they run a lot of 11 personnel, because given what this personnel, the way it's set up on this offense set up from a personnel standpoint, they have really, really good running backs. I put their running backs up against, not St. Louis, Los Angeles running backs. I feel like that's a better room down in Atlanta. So you're going to have to cater to that. So I think catering to your personnel and seeing him getting comfortable calling plays, then I feel like it'll be a trickle-down effect to kind of see how things go.
Well, the trickle-down effect and what the rookies are able to do starts this week. When we come back, we'll talk about what we want to see from those rooks in the deep dive. This episode of the Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And if you've been watching in both the NBA and the NHL, you have seen series go down to the wire, some of the most epic instant classic series that we've been able to see. So I am sure when we get to the second round in both of those leagues, as they've started already, for some of those series, we're going to have some epic battles. And why not take a bet, take a stab at it and see what you can get. It's spreads, it's money lines, it's player props, and so much more. That's how you can get $150 with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel.com/locked-on to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming and all the noise. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll talk about everything that is Atlanta sports here on this Locked On Sports Atlanta channel, including the Falcons and rookie minicamp that starts this weekend. So, Aaron, who will you have your eye on as offseason workouts continue to ramp up with this 2024 draft class?
Well, I'm interested in the D linemen, but I'm also interested in the lack of fullbacks on the Atlanta Falcons roster. Fullback is a position that is close, near and dear to my heart. The
I didn't
Falcons
know what you were going to say.
fullbacks on the Falcons, they have had basically 30 years. They're like the last team that has maintained continuity at the fullback position, with Bob Christian going back 25, 27 years ago, and they've had a fullback, and I just not ready to go into an era of Falcons football that doesn't feature a fullback in their offense, from Bob Christian to Justin Griffin to Ovi Mahaley to Patrick DeMarco to whatever we had for a couple of years, and then finally Keith Smith. I'm disappointed that there isn't really a true fullback. They brought Robert Burns on the practice squad, and I'm maybe he can be that guy, hopefully, but the fact that there's no fullbacks is what are we doing here? This, I've never experienced this in my life.
Suddenly, Free has turned my attention all the way. It's like a 180 for this weekend. I don't even know what to say. I mean, Tori, who is going to be more important for you to pay attention to than Robert Burns this weekend? I mean, you really got to reset, Tori. You got to reset.
All right, please help us out, Tori. Normally I do this type of stuff, but I'm so glad Aaron took the reins today. I'm glad. Thank you, Aaron.
Somehow I'm gonna try and Kirk us back. I mean, he was gonna say the defensive tackles and the D line. I'll go with that. Truly, I mean, that's where you're gonna see the most new faces. I mean, at that position, the defensive front is where you're going to see the most bang for your buck, almost, because those are where majority of your second round pick, third round pick, fourth round, all of those middle round picks are all kind of congealed into this one location on the field. Which if y'all know, y'all been out to practice, the defensive tackles are way on the other side of the field. So it's
I have my binoculars. Got some
binoculars. So I'm excited for those guys, because I mean, there is such a heavy rotation that happens across the defensive front, because you have to have a heavy rotation across the defensive front. And I think the Falcons saw really, really solid success in that model last year, having guys fresh and keeping guys fresh. Grady Jarrett obviously coming back from the knee injury, David Onyemata coming back. But honestly, this is more like a mini camp, mandatory mini camp conversation. But I am still looking forward to seeing a lot of these, Ruke Orhorhoro. I am really excited to see him in person. Brandon Dorless. I mean, Bralen Trice. I'm ready to see how they look in person, because I can sit there and watch film on these guys all day long. But until they're standing right in front of me and I can actually start piecing together in my mind who they would work well beside and how they would work in tandem with Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, Lorenzo Carter, Zach Harrison, Arnold Ebiketie, until I can see that, it's all kind of just things are just firing in my head. So I'm excited to at least have a view of them to see what they can do.
Yeah, I think that's where I am, Jarvis, too, just in terms of kind of taking that sneak peek and in my little head, kind of comparing them to kind of what we saw a couple years ago when we were all excited, for example, about seeing, to your point, Tori and Arnold Ebiketie, or even going back to the excitement around, what can Taquan Graham do? Just kind of going across that and the entirety of some of the more recent defensive picks for the Falcons, and kind of seeing, Jarvis, is there going to be a breakout or breakouts that literally force this current defensive roster, the current depth chart, to kind of earn their money, to be honest with you?
Ooh, I got one for you. I think that's gonna be Bralen Trice.
Yes,
He's
I
the
can give you
guy.
that one.
That is my guy. That's who I'm tabbing right now as my favorite guy. Because anytime you see somebody in a press conference with dark shades on, with the light kind of with no lighting, like I just something about that person that would do that, right? Wearing dark shades in the club, we always question those people, right? But for me to see him and watch him on their press conference with those dark behind shades on, oh my gosh, I was just like, yeah, it's something about this cat. And then when you watch the film, the dude is absolutely relentless. Like, he doesn't stop. And he's in tune with his play, right? Because, a lot of times players, I'm the best player ever, oh my God. And when you think about, like, when they ask him about the comparison, he said Max Crosby. And Max Crosby plays the exact same way. The dude is relentless. He just keep coming. You can't pinpoint, like, oh, he has this amazing arm over move, or he has this amazing dip and rip. That's how he got 50,000 sacks since he's been into the NFL. But you can sit there and turn that tape on, you watch him, you just like, oh, this dude just keeps coming. He just keeps coming. Double team. It keeps coming. Triple team, whatever. Chip by the back. He keeps coming. He just doesn't stop. And I think that's the type of guy that I'm definitely going to have my eye on going forward, because, that and, sunglasses. Just, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, it definitely makes you think, okay, he's one of those guys where you've set the standard with how it is you presented yourself as far as the first impression goes. So yeah, I think if nothing else, we'll be interested to see, can you back that up? Because that's kind of bold to pull up on your opening press conference in that way. So we shall see. Now, Tori, USAtoday.com's The Wire chose a sleeper for every team from the 2024 draft class. They chose 6th round pick and wide receiver out of Illinois, Casey Washington. And I feel like you mentioned him last week, but I could be wrong. Hey, look, it's been a week, guys. It has been a rough week. Dirty birds or flying birds or something like that. Anyway, so Tori, I wanted to start with you because I feel like you might have mentioned him, but if so, or if not, who is maybe your sleeper in this Falcons 2024 class?
Yeah, I did mention Casey Washington just because I feel like he is someone who, when you think of a sleeper, you do think of someone who is completely under the radar, that you're kind of just like, because I remember last year feeling the same way about DeMarco Hellams. He's someone who you felt like at the time of the pick, it's like, okay, he's going to come in and be, a core special teams player. He plays really aggressively. Like, he's on a good upward trend. You're getting someone at that point in the draft. You're in the 7th round of the draft. You're just getting someone that you feel like can come in and, play some type of role.
Right.
And then he turns into a starter. And is right there, right along Jesse Bates and Richie Grant, and really, truly, I think did some things in the back half of the season that made you excited about what he could be moving forward. You talk about value picks, like that's a value pick right there. And so I think I want kind of the same thing for someone like a Casey Washington, because you look at the way that the wide receiver room is currently constructed, and you bring back, Drake London's back regardless, still on that rookie deal. But then you bring in Ray McLeod, you bring in Darnell Mooney, you bring in Rondell Moore, and all of those guys are very different in terms of body styles and what you use them in terms of scheme because of their size and speed. Well, Casey Washington is a bit different body style. He's a little bit longer, a little bit taller, but he still is very, very fast and very quick. So I'm very curious to see how he can kind of pave a way almost for himself. It doesn't have to be this huge thing where he's getting 10 targets a game. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying. But if he could go out and earn a spot on this 53-man roster and be kind of a good option for the Falcons at any point across, what their route trees are, I think that's a win for someone like a Casey Washington who's coming from Illinois, who I don't know, doesn't have these huge flashy numbers at all over the course of his college career, but like someone who can turn into something at the right time, I think is something. If he can show that he's reliable, that's something that I think could go a long way with this scheme specifically.
Yeah, and to your point, a little bit of a different body type than we had been accustomed to seeing in the previous regime. Now, you might think, Sixth round, you might think hot takey, but maybe not, because Tori makes some great points there. But there are still some people who are doing some hot takey things when it comes to the pick at 8 in the first round. Okay, you want to have your say? We're going to have our say as well in what's next. This episode of our Atlanta Falcons party is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game on, game off, game back on, but we're pausing from our Atlanta football party game to talk about this new game, Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In fact, if you guys follow me anywhere on social media, you know I'm always talking about brunch, right? And we even had a conversation at brunch yesterday about Monopoly Go, where one of my good friends and sorority sisters has 3 separate groups, family members, friends, and some other sorority sisters who are playing Monopoly Go. It is that serious. So you can team up with your friends too for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you can unlock. And there's so much more to get. The unique stickers you can trade with friends, to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis that you can taunt your friends with when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. So Monopoly Go also feels new and exciting every day because they're constantly changing their tournaments and their challenges. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now for free on Google Play or Play on the App Store. It's Monopoly Go. Game on. All right, guys. So we are just a couple days away from the much anticipated 2024 NFL schedule release. You know, sidebar, why has this become a thing? It's like everything has become a thing. Like it's a big deal. I mean, obviously we know the opponents and we know which teams are the home teams and which are the away. And Jarvis, I see you're trying to chime in, but you're on mute. So go right in and chime in and let us know, because you look like you are chopping at the bit to tell us which matchups you are most intrigued by, the ones you kind of can't wait to find out when the Falcons are going to face them.
Well, I'll probably say one team that kind of pops out at me because, you know, it's a little, you know, personal for me because my father is a big time Cowboys fan. So,
fan,
you know, yeah. So, you know, I have to figure out a way to get into that game, get him into that game. You know, I might even, you know, take a little day off, you know, I'm going to go to the game with my pops, you know what I'm saying? Let y'all hold it down with
You're
Falcons
going to have to cover that game.
Right. Right. So yeah, it's always, you know, good to see the biggest show on earth, right? You know, come in town. You know, Jerry Jones, not talking about the football team, you know,
right.
Jerry Jones. Yeah. Because that's the biggest show. He's the big man on campus. So, you know, I think that's gonna be real cool. So yeah, that was definitely the first one that I saw. I was like, oh yeah, Cowboys coming down. Yeah. Gotta get in for that one for sure.
How about you, Free? Which one is intriguing where you're like, I'm interested to see where they land on the Falcons schedule?
Well, I didn't, you know, I'm a football nerd, so I think all the matchups are intriguing. So like sort of picking out one. Obviously, like I want to see what they do against the Chiefs, right? Like when do they get the Chiefs on their schedule? But like for me, like it's really about like that first month of the season, that first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. Like who are they matching up with in those games? Because you look at Kirk Cousins' history in Minnesota, like he didn't usually start the season well. Like his Septembers were a little rocky, but like he would get it going in October and in November and things would be fine. But like I do wonder a little bit because of the dynamic here in Atlanta with Michael Penix, if Kirk Cousins gets off to a little bit of a rocky start, or are we going to get some boo birds or whatever? So like those first 4 games, like they kind of need to win those. You know, they need to get off to a good start, even if Kirk isn't necessarily playing the best football at that point. So who those first like 4 games are going to be very intriguing to me, because it's just like it could lead to a certain narrative coming up in October is basically what I'm saying, you know, for a so-called quarterback controversy. I have no idea, but you know, I'm intrigued by all the drama that may be in Atlanta this week.
Yes. Aaron has been on one this morning. Just saying.
Love it. It's been so good.
We don't get to see the side of Free very often. We like it. How about you, Tori? Which one are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so first off, I want to say I know that the jokes will write themselves about like schedule release, but I know how hard the people in the building have been working on this, particularly our social team. And
Sure.
I'm really, really excited for everyone to see kind of what they put together and what they've been working on, honestly, since like November. So I don't want to hype it up too much, but I think it's really fun and it's very Atlanta. So I'm very excited about that. But to answer your question, I'll go the opposite direction from Aaron. I'll go to the back 4 games because usually the way it's been the last few years is the last 4 games have decided the NFC South. Now, if you're the Falcons, you are hoping that you get to that point and you have the NFC South locked. And I think that should be your goal. If you get to the last 4 games and it's still kind of a little bit of a question mark, I don't think that's a failure per se, but I definitely think that it kind of changes the way that you look at where this team is at this point in time. This team is supposedly built to win now. So by that point in time in the season, you hope that they've won enough to really have the NFC South in reach. But those last 4 games, there's always been this like chaotic energy of these last 4 games over the last few years because of the nature of the NFC South. And you know that you're going to have the Bucks, Carolina, and the Saints in those last, in that last month. That's how it's been the last few years. I guarantee it's how it's going to be again this year. So for that, it's like those games matter. And you may not have, that's why they do it this way. They want those games to matter in the back half of the season. They want to have only played your NFC South opponents one time. That way these games at the back end mean so much more. But if the Falcons can go out and do what they need to do and what they should do, which is beat some of these teams, those games feel a little bit different. So, but I still think that we're going to get to like December and mid-December, and we're going to be having these conversations about NFC South stuff, and it's just like those games are going to matter, and they just are. So it's like I know it's funny because I'm sitting here, there's no surprise. Like we know who those opponents are going to be. We know exactly kind of like what needs to happen in order for the Falcons to get to where they want to go, but they've got to win the NFC South this year. So I mean, I don't like saying they got to, but they got to.
But you got to.
So
we're at that point.
Right. We're at that point.
On this show, yes, they have to.
They got to. So for that, I don't care less about anything. Like I hope Taylor Swift comes to Atlanta so bad, but after the last time that we went to Dallas and it was 44-3 or whatever that was, like 2 years ago. If there can be some redemption there, great. But I almost at this point don't care about anything else outside of the NFC South. Like that's where I am. If you can go out and win games in the NFC South and put yourself atop that division, postseason is postseason. Crazier things have happened. Like literally, just look at Tampa Bay last year. Like so, all of these things. I just win the NFC South. Like at this point, just win it. Just do it.
Just do it. So apropos to end. On that note. And I will say one more thing. I don't have any like skin in the game normally. All I know is that there better not be any black and yellow at that stadium on November 10th. Period. You can play anybody the hell you want to play on November 10th, but you darn sure can't play the Pittsburgh Steelers on November 10th or it's going to be a problem. Anyway, I appreciate you guys stopping by our Atlanta football party to hear me say what everybody better not do in the NFL, according to Tenitra Batiste. Anyway, it's your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk, and kindly when you guys let me talk a little bit of Steelers. But be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. We'll see you tomorrow on the Atlanta Football Party, the Dogs edition.